Tonight, well-known scholar and former Saskatchewan judge Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond says she's Cree, but historical records raise doubts. And we ride along for a close-up look at how climate change is amplified and affecting communities in Canada's north. Plus, roll up your sleeve. As the pandemic rolls on, flu season has arrived, and so have flu shots.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Wednesday, October 12th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. A CBC investigation is raising doubts about the ancestry claims of one of Canada's most prominent and successful Indigenous scholars and leaders. Former Saskatchewan judge Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond has been a high-profile voice on behalf of Indigenous communities for decades. She claims to be a Treaty Indian and to have Indigenous ancestors, but that doesn't appear to be backed up by documentation. As Jeff Leo shows us, her story illustrates the complex and evolving debate around Indigenous identity in Canada.
In 1999, Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond was already a well-established national figure when she sat down for an interview with Pamela Wallen.
Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond. She is the first Native judge in Saskatchewan.
Mary Ellen Turpel is also with us.
Turpel-Lafond leapt to national prominence earlier in that decade when she served as constitutional advisor to the Assembly of First Nations during the contentious Charlottetown Accord debates.
So it's going to be very difficult to say exactly what the Native vote is.
The Harvard and Cambridge-educated legal scholar has served as a law professor, a judge, and a children's advocate. And she's received honorary doctorates from 10 Canadian universities.
Over the past decade, she has been the voice of those who cannot be heard, particularly those from Aboriginal communities.
My father's a Cree Indian from Norway House, Manitoba.
What status does that give you?
I'm a Treaty Indian.
93-year-old Joe Keeper, a Cree man from Norway House, knew Turpel-Lafond's father, Billy. They went to school together in the 1930s. Keeper said he'd never heard this claim that Billy was Cree.
He was not an Indian boy, he was a white boy. The first I've heard of Billy being Indian is when I've heard it from you.
Turpel-Lafond says her dad was raised by her grandparents, William and Eleanor Turpel, who were both of European ancestry. They moved to Norway House in the late 1920s when Billy's father was hired by Indian Affairs as the local doctor. He served the Indian Hospital and the Indian Residential School.
There was a Dr. Turpel at Norway House when I was just a boy. The Turpels were not Cree. They were white people.
Turpel-Lafond declined an interview with CBC, but in an email she insisted her father is Cree, though she wouldn't say who she thinks his biological parents were. She would only hint at family secrets. Now, CBC reached out to her sister, and she said she thinks that her dad was possibly adopted from a Cree family by her grandparents or was the product of an affair between her grandpa and a Cree woman. So CBC went hunting for records on its own. It discovered this newspaper announcement, which says William and Eleanor Turpel are Billy's mom and dad. A baptismal record says the same thing.
In that normal way of doing things, as an historian, when you see all these records line up, it would be very hard for me as an historian to not conclude that the boy born in Victoria was, in fact, the son of William and Eleanor Turpel.
Turpel-Lafond also claims to be a Treaty Indian, but CBC has found no evidence to support that claim. And she has declined to provide her status card, or even say if she has one. Indigenous scholars and politicians say there's a growing problem in this country of non-Indigenous people taking away opportunities from First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people by improperly claiming Indigenous ancestry. Winona Wheeler says because Turpel-Lafond has had a high-profile career while claiming to be a Treaty Indian, she owes the public some answers.
People have the right to know that, who you're related to. So why wouldn't you be forthcoming about that? If she can't identify her Indigenous lineage, who's to say it even exists?
Turpel-Lafond says CBC's questions about her ancestry are offensive and are an invasion of her privacy. She points out that she's been accepted into her husband's First Nations community, the Muskeg Lake Cree Nation, here in Saskatchewan. And high-profile supporters of Turpel-Lafond, both inside and outside of that community, say if she's been accepted by a First Nations community, that should be good enough for everyone. Jeff Leo, CBC News, Regina.
You can learn more about Jeff Leo's in-depth report titled Disputed History. You can find that at cbc.ca/sask. Hockey Saskatchewan has not decided yet if it will stop sending player fee transfers to Hockey Canada. The provincial organization says it's waiting to see an action plan from Hockey Canada on preventing sexual misconduct. Yesterday, Hockey Canada announced its entire board of directors and its CEO had stepped aside. Their resignations come amid widespread criticism over the organization's handling of sexual assault allegations. Most major sponsors have pulled out, and several provincial associations have distanced themselves from the national body. But Hockey Saskatchewan's general manager says he had faith in the previous board.
Everybody that resigned was all committed to change. But I think it was just a lot of pressure that caused a lot of stress on all of them. If they weren't committed to change, we would be sitting here doing nothing. But in fact, we are working on things. And especially in the area of maltreatment, which before this even happened, maltreatment was a big area for all of us across the country. And, we're expecting some things on education on maltreatment that, especially that goes on ice in terms of, statements that people make on ice to one another. And, so there's been a commitment to that. And, unfortunately, they won't see it through, but the rest of us will.
McClintock says representatives of the provincial hockey organizations are meeting this weekend to discuss next steps. Flu shots are now available, and you can get the flu shot and a COVID-19 vaccine at the same time. Saskatchewan's health minister rolled up his sleeve at a flu clinic inside Victoria Square Mall in Regina this afternoon, as did the province's chief medical health officer. Dr. Saqib Shahab is predicting an early flu season, but seniors will have some extra protection. This year, for the first time, people 65 and older are eligible for a higher dose influenza vaccine called Fluzone. Shahab says seniors and other high-risk people need to protect themselves from both the flu and COVID.
COVID has become less severe. It's still 2 to 3 times more severe than influenza right now, especially if you're older. But influenza, again, can be significant if you're older. So I think the measures are the same. Get your vaccine, and if you're older or have risk factors, you can choose to wear a mask, especially in crowded indoor locations. Staying home if you're unwell is really important. Don't go to work or school or office.
For the most up-to-date information on drop-in clinic times and locations, or to even make a booking, visit www.forflu.ca. International students in Saskatchewan are applauding a move by the federal government to let them work more hours, at least for now. The Department of Immigration is temporarily lifting the 20-hour work week restriction. As Pratush Dayal reports, many say the change should be permanent.
For me personally, I think it's a really great news for all the international students, and I personally would like to work more than 20 hours.
Krunal Chhabra says he plans to work at least 30 hours a week to help pay for his tuition at the University of Saskatchewan. In the past, international students were only allowed to work 20 hours a week. The 19-year-old computer engineering student says working more will help him to reduce his student loans.
For me personally, I would say like 20 hours a week would just cover my rent and like my daily expenses here and there. But if anything extraordinary would come, like if I need to buy any subscription for any course or if any book that I needed to buy, it wouldn't fit that budget.
The Canadian government says about 500,000 students would be eligible for this program, and that this change will help address Canada's labour shortages. The pilot policy starts next month and stays in effect until December 31st of next year. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business says it's not a magic fix for labour shortages, but will make an impact.
With half of Saskatchewan small businesses reporting they're being impacted by labour shortages, any measures to help ease this pressure are much appreciated by small business owners.
Many international students say they want the change to become permanent.
I came here in 2019 where, doing 20 hours jobs, part-time minimum wage jobs would help with the, expenses and everything. But now with 8.6% inflation, everything has gone up. Like, I look at my credit card statement and I'm like, what's happening?
But even without any limits, some will stick to 20 hours a week.
I don't think I can balance more. If I work more, I can't study more.
Some experts worry this change will add more pressure on students, pulling them between work and study. Pratish Dayal, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Regina City Council has approved heritage status for 9 buildings in the city, including an apartment building that even the owners admit is not attractive.
So the Prince Charles, when they say it's an eyesore, yeah, it is kind of an eyesore.
The Prince Charles apartments are located on 15th Avenue and overlook Regina's Central Park. An architectural report says this 13-story tower represents the 60s building boom in the city. Heritage status could result in $50,000 for upgrades and significant tax exemptions, but the building owners need to apply to council at another time for those benefits. Well, the weather outside today was a bit frightful with gusting wind and cool temperatures, and if that didn't scare you inside, maybe this will. It's that time of year. Halloween decorations are starting to pop up. This Regina home is already decked out with skeletons, clowns, spiders, and even a headless horseman. Ethan Williams will be back after the break to share if Mother Nature is promising tricks or treats.
This weather update is brought to you by Capital Ford Lincoln. 22 model clearout is on now.
And CBC weather specialist Ethan Williams joins me now. The wind has been relentless today.
Yeah, it has been pretty incredible, Sam. And to have 3 or 4 straight days of this, it's been pretty brutal. And, it's not just the leaves on the trees this wind is stripping away. It's taken down entire branches off trees in some cases. This was in the 2900 block of Ritalik Street in Regina this morning. A huge branch falling on top of this vehicle. Thankfully, it looks like the heaviest part of the branch fell just behind it, so the owner is lucky, but indeed a very close call there. And that's not the only report of damage that we have had this afternoon. This is a traffic light pole that came down to the corner of Prince of Wales Drive and Victoria Avenue. Thanks to Ian for spotting that and for sending it in. We also now have a grass fire, a wildfire that's been reported just west of Weyburn. And we now know that Highway 13, which runs right along here just west of the city, is now closed for a portion into Weyburn. And there's no detour. You're just being asked to turn around at this point. We are very dry across the province, so if you have to do any controlled burns or if you're having any campfires of any sort, keep in mind that with the wind and this very dry soil conditions that we are seeing, that will likely spark off fires pretty quickly. Now we go from fires to dust. This is actually dust blowing off, or alkali actually blowing off of lakes in south central Saskatchewan this afternoon. This is courtesy of the satellite imagery, and you can see it's now blowing into Montana. So if you have to do any driving, especially along the Trans-Canada tonight, west of Regina, all the way basically to the Alberta border, keep in mind that this could reduce visibility. And a couple of weeks ago, we did see a little bit of a pileup on the Trans-Canada because of this, so do be careful if you are heading out. Peak wind gusts today, we did get over 100 kilometers an hour in Estevan, and I believe that now breaks an October record for strongest wind gust in Estevan. Moose Jaw, Weyburn, Regina, all clocking well over 80 kilometers an hour. Saskatoon getting very close to 80 as well. And wind gusts still very strong at this hour, gusting upwards of 90 kilometers an hour in portions of southeastern Saskatchewan. Wind warnings still in place for Moose Jaw, Assiniboia, Gravelbourg, and Weyburn-Estevan. Likely going to be continuing through the night. Low pressure here, all to blame for it. It's very low pressure at this time. You can see the gradient here, very tight. Lingering flurries tonight in the north of the province. Clear in the south, windy all over. This low pressure system actually starts to reform and swings around, and by the time we get into tomorrow afternoon, we can see moisture all over Manitoba. It will sneak into portions of eastern Saskatchewan by the time we get to early Friday morning, maybe in the form of a little bit of mixed precipitation, not too widespread though, and then cloudy cloud cover, a mix of sun and cloud for Friday. Winds gusting through the night tonight. Tomorrow, we're looking for gusts between 50 and 70 kilometers an hour again, especially in southeastern Saskatchewan. And even Friday, much of us will get a reprieve except for the southwest, close to 50 kilometers an hour there. Our next 7 days in Regina, a very gusty day tomorrow. We could see wind chills tonight close to -10 in Regina with all this very windy conditions that we're seeing and some cooler temperatures. And then heading into next week, it looks like things will begin to improve. Saskatoon, we are looking for a windy day tomorrow, maybe breezy on Saturday as well. Temperatures for this time of year actually staying pretty close to normal, Sam, so if we can just deal with the wind for a couple more days, there's a reward on the other side.
It's not good when 50K feels like a breeze.
Yeah, that's a bit of a relief, it seems.
Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
An Edmonton woman captured an unexpected sight on her doorbell camera. Janice Mercier caught this meteor falling from the sky in Black Mud Creek neighborhood. A U of A professor in the Department of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences says the meteor was pretty weak and not much of it survived the journey through the atmosphere. We'll be back after the break. Climate change is affecting all Canadians, but in the north, those effects are amplified. Tonight, we take you to the small community of Fort Chipewyan in northern Alberta. Its landscape has been altered by industry and climate change, but the community is adapting, including an annual camp studying fish in the Peace Athabasca Delta. Christy Kleimenhaga was invited to go along.
I think it's time we stopped and start thinking about things. And not for us. When we're gone, this world's still going to be here, but our children are going to be here. And they're the ones that are going to suffer the ill effects of our actions. You know, it may be too late already, but I mean, at least we should try. Yeah.
Robert Grandjam navigates the waters of the Peace Athabasca Delta easily.
So the darker the water, the more reflection of the sun, the warmer the water is.
These are his highways. He grew up hunting and fishing here, and he's seen how the land has changed.
Yeah, the last couple of years I noticed the wind is getting really, really strong and more often. It never used to be like that.
Today he's heading to Jackfish, about 90 minutes south of Fort Chipewyan, for the annual fish camp.
Really rough out there. Good morning.
Humpback, blister. We have the scientists here. So fat content is some too. We have the land users here.
I just cut the fillet off. I don't bother the stomach.
Yeah, we needed to sample 100 from all the other locations.
And they're going to work together to assess the overall health of the fish. I was like, whoa, steps I'm getting in.
Lori Cyprian is one of the organizers behind this year's event.
The people of the communities, they've been seeing this forever, right? So the scientists are starting to see it as well now. So we're trying to talk their language.
We've also been sampling for hydrocarbons in the fish themselves. And so
Data analyst Caroline Bamfield is one of the scientists working with the community. She gathers samples to send back to the lab.
We're looking at the shape and size of the fish and if they have enough fat and if they are producing enough eggs. We look at the livers to see how big they are and how much energy they're putting into the livers, and that gives us a sense as to whether the fish are stressed or whether they're subject to toxins in the environment.
Geez, I wonder what my dad would have said about this process.
While the camp is focused on fish, changes to the Delta are top of mind.
Thank you, sir. We have the hard truth data right here. It's not a fishing story anymore. Climate change is just one small part of the bigger picture as well, right? So we have industry upstream, we have Bennett dams. Climate change just adds to all of those effects that we've been seeing for years. The water levels are dropping significantly earlier than they're supposed to be dropping. People can't access, their traditional areas like they used to.
Complicating matters, the seasonal flooding that recharges these waterways is becoming less reliable.
They say a delta changes. We know that. But not at the rate that it's happening. Pickerel, no beer better.
Alice Rigney was born in Fort Chipewyan and spent much of her childhood at the Jackfish camp.
When you start thinking about all the other lakes in the delta, where my dad used to go hunt, and yeah, you can't get to them. One lake here we call Egg Lake. A couple years ago, I went there with my brothers, and in runners, I was able to walk pretty well across the lake, where it used to be 8 feet of water. Doesn't take long to cook.
Look at how easy she makes it.
How's it, Kayla?
She's really good, thank you.
My question is, I'm not concerned about me 50 years from now. I'm not going to be here. But I have a 9-year-old grandson. What is it going to look like for him? I got to go get more fish.
Keeping it? Yeah. Maybe Alice or something. Buddy will want it.
Morgan Voyager checks the camp's fishing nets.
There's 2 set east of here.
He worries what will be left for his children.
I did it for practice all my life. And my son here too has been doing it all his life. He's the one that actually went and set all these nets. This one here is the northern pike, the drought.
He works with the community tracking change in the water. He's seen levels drop and temperatures rise.
It has a drastic effect on the dissolved oxygen in the water. So with no oxygen, the fish can't breathe, so they either die off or they move on, right? When there's no more water, we'll have to adapt, which will be sad.
I don't think I'll ever see that in my lifetime.
Never know.
How do you adapt as someone who is so close to the land every day and make a living off of the land?
I think with the changing environment, we as human beings, we have to start adapting. Well, we should have started long ago, but we didn't want to. We could manipulate the land to change it so that it's better for us, such as if the river gets low, well, then you put a dam in. Well, we have to stop doing that. We see the impacts of our activities of manipulating the land now.
Elders and community members alike say they expect more changes to come, but they hope that events like the Jackfish Camp will continue to build bridges between scientific and Indigenous communities, better preparing both for the future impacts of climate change. Christy Kleiman-Haga, CBC News, Fort Chipewyan, Alberta.
And Ethan is back with one last look at tonight's weather.
And it looks very similar to what we saw this time yesterday, Sam. Tonight at midnight in Regina, we're looking for clear skies around 3 degrees, but very strong northwest winds continuing. And keep in mind, if you're in places like Moose Jaw, Swift Current, down to Assiniboia, Gravelbourg, the wind could blow some of that dust because it is so very dry there. So keep in mind for visibility, especially tomorrow morning in Regina. Sunny conditions, those northwest winds continuing to gust out of the northwest close to 60 kilometers an hour and getting close to 70 as we head to the noon hour. Saskatoon, very similar. We'll be around 3 degrees at midnight with northwest winds close to 50 kilometers an hour. Again, still staying sunny as we head toward 8 a.m. at 1 degree, and we'll warm up to 10 as we get to the noon hour. Very strong gusts continue, Sam. It looks like this should be the last day of those very, very strong winds.
I sure hope so. Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
And that is it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can head to our website or YouTube channel. Ethan and I will be back with more tonight at 11. We leave you now with the gorgeous fall views of White Butte Trails. Thank you for watching and have a great night.